Here is part 1 to the resto-mod of my 1986 F-250 that I picked up in February of 2020. It's getting a 12-valve Cummins out of a 1990 Dodge D250. I started work by pulling the hood and the front clip off the truck. There was some rust underneath that I wanted to see how bad it was, and I found it was worse than I thought on the core support mount and also on the Dana 60 that I sourced that I was going to be using for the truck. I found that axle out in central Pennsylvania where it had been rusting for most of its life, and I found some pretty big issues with it, especially on the passenger side with the spring perch and the track bar bracket. But I sourced new ones and cut off the old ones and welded on the new ones. It was pretty straightforward, nothing too difficult, but it was something that was a little tedious, especially with measuring and making sure you got it in the right spot. I then pulled the cab off the truck, which was a little difficult. I used a gantry that I had bought from some guy on Facebook Marketplace that was local to me, but the gantry was not tall enough to get the cab high enough to get it off the frame, so I had to let all the air out of the back tires and then drag it out from under the cab. I only had about an inch or so of clearance, and I broke the heater box when I was taking the cab off. One of the lines that was on the heater box got stuck on the frame and ripped off. So here's the front axle that's going in my 1986 F-250. It's an extended cab long bed. It's getting a Cummins swap in it. This axle's out of a 95 F-350. It's got the bolt-on calipers from the later model OBSs. So I had to put a new lower spring plate and track bar bracket on it. The old one was rusted out. I know the welds don't look too great, but you know, it'll do the trick. And I'm going to be running a sway bar, so I gotta get new bolts for it. I'm running the stock track bar bracket. I'm running the stock Pitman arm off an F-350 from 95. I did have to buy the lower spring plate. Did not come with the axle when I bought it. That ran me like 95 bucks on eBay. I'm going to be putting new rotors, ball joints. The U-joints in here are a little sloppy. New rotors, ball joints, pads, calipers, bearings, wheel bearings, bushings for the sway bar, and possibly new hubs. I want to see what these look like. But then this thing I'm going to throw under the truck. The truck is currently right here. So it's, you know, stripped down pretty good. Basically just a rolling chassis at the moment. I've got the stock TTB unbolted, and I will be putting a reverse shackle kit on it from Sky Manufacturing with Super Duty springs. This week I'm going to be painting the frame, and then I'll be swapping the axle into it. I will be doing the rear axle out of the same truck. They have 355 gears in them because we're going to be running a Cummins along with the ZF5. The ZF5's from the same 94 truck. I got the trans, axles, the transfer case actually I'm going to be running out of a 97. It's a Borg-Warner 4407. So that's about it for now. I will have more updates in the future. When I pulled the steering box off, I found that there was rust holes in the frame, so I ended up cutting that out and welding in a new piece. I even broke one of the steering box bolts that had gotten stuck inside the frame and rusted solid. Okay, so right here I'm installing the reverse shackle kit. I got this top bolt drilled in. This one is just a bolt that goes through the original shackle hanger. You can see right here, it's the front shackle hanger. It goes through here. So they give you, I think that's a 5/8 bolt, and it comes through the existing hole. You line that up, stick it on through, and then that lines up this front crossmember brace to be in the correct spot. So yeah, then you measure from this front hole back to the factory eye hole for the rear hanger back there, 55.5 inches. And then you can drill this hole, and this hole, and then do the same thing on the other side too. And then that top one misses up here. It goes through the bracket right there. But yeah, so this one, see, I've got a clamp at 2 inches on the center of the hole. Pull it out to here, and very close, within 1/8 of an inch. So that's all set for that. I have the piece for the core support that hangs it on there. I just have to put it on yet, but making some progress. I've still got to drill 1, 2, 5 more holes, and then I will be set. I do have to weld in that on the inside of the frame, but I have not decided if I'm going to do that before or after I paint the frame. I might paint from the frame cross member up after, because I still have to fix all of that. I've got to put this bracket on, and then I want to coat the inside of the frame here. I don't know if you can see. I can't get my HVLP gun in there, so I got some Eastwood internal frame coating to coat the frame with. I did get some of the frame nice and cleaned up. You can see right up in here, VIN number stamped on the frame. I did not know that. I thought it was on the driver's side, but apparently not. I do have to cut off that cross member yet. There's 4 rivets that hold that on, and then 2 bolts at the top. Got the bolts out, still have to pull the rivets off. I ground the heads off the rivets that hold on the rear shackle hangers, but, well, the rear spring hangers for the front, but I did not get them off yet because I have to use them for installing the reverse shackle kit, and I wanted to get the reverse shackle kit on before I painted the frame so that the holes would not be raw after I drilled through the fresh paint. But I still have to punch out that rivet, this rivet, and then these 2 rivets right here. I don't know if you can see. On the other side, I have to punch out the bottom 2 rivets, and then those 4 rivets. The ones that you see on the inside of the frame that don't look like I've touched them, I've ground off on the outside of the frame. I've got them popped off over here, but I need to finish the job. But I'll do that after I set the shackle hanger up for the front, and then hopefully tomorrow I'll get this thing in paint. Last night wire wheeled a bunch of the frame, but I still got to get up in these little spots, get that all cleaned up. Rear springs, not using. I have a set of Super Duty springs. Ground off the shackle hangers for the back. I got to punch the rivets out of the frame, but I'm not using the Super Duty shackle hangers or I'm not using the stock bullnose shackle hangers because I'm running a Super Duty spring, Super Duty shackles, a little bit different. Here, I'll show you the difference right here. The shackle is beefier when compared to the stock bullnose shackle. And then if you see here, see how much of that like webbing is there? Then on the Super Duty shackle, there's far less because of the angle that it sits in. It's got a bigger wrap on the spring. So that's all for now. I'll get back to it and have more updates for you later. Here's the frame stripped down and ready to be wire wheeled and then painted. I planned on using chassis saver and then top coating it with KSB top coat. Here's the steering box patch that I made for the rust holes that were there. Cut out the old and welded in the new piece. Not pretty, but it works. And then here's me painting the frame. As I said earlier, was using chassis saver black gloss as a base coat, and then I top coated it for UV protection with KSB coatings black top. It was a little expensive at, I think, $40 a quart, but it turns out very nice. You do have to adjust the spray gun to make it work, but overall not too difficult. Here are the Carrot Custom 2nd Gen motor mounts that I was using, and they are very nice but a little difficult to put together. I then used some degreaser that I got from the dollar store and coated the motor in it. It was very disgusting, as you can see, and power washed it down, cleaned it up real good before I started to fix some things on it. I wanted to replace a few gaskets, tab the killer dowel pin, which had started to walk out about a 1/16 of an inch, but I caught that before it became an issue, tapped it back in, and then tabbed it with a kit I got on Amazon. overall, that went much smoother than I thought. I cleaned up the timing cover and put that back on with some sealant and a paper gasket. I then got the axles put under the frame. I was using the Dana 60 out of the 95 and the 10 and a quarter from the same truck. I got the Carrot Custom motor mounts for a second gen isolator style put in. They were not too difficult to put in, but some of the bolts I needed a hammer to punch through because the holes weren't perfect. I mean, I was expecting that, but just something to be aware of. Then I got the wheels put back on and ready to put the cab on the frame. I pulled the frame out with the zero turn, getting ready to put it under, but I had to use some wheel dollies because the wheels made it too tall. The cab wouldn't sit underneath it. I then got my dad to help me push the frame underneath the cab and then get it dropped down and loosely bolted on. I didn't tighten the cab mount bolts because I have plans to pull the cab again and fix some of the floor pans. I then painted the motor Ford blue as it was going in a Ford. I thought it matched. I also decided to pull the oil pan off and replace that gasket while I had it out and easily accessible. I then put the ZF5 adapter plate and flywheel on, which I then ended up taking off. I used a 6.0 starter and I did not have to trim the block like some say. I had to beat in the firewall to make the motor fit. Then I got to putting the motor in the truck. That was quite the process, but it got in. I put the clutch on the motor, but I ended up taking it off and selling it later as I chose to go with the ZF6, which I found a great deal on. I also flipped the exhaust manifold so the turbo would sit up on top because otherwise it would hit the AC box and the downpipe would not be able to clear. Then I put on my blue top steering box that I got. That bolted up real nice and should make the steering much better. I then put the front clip back on the truck. That was just for temporary and to see how much fan clearance I would have with the radiator. I didn't have as much as I thought, but I do have a few things that I'm going to have to do to address that. I used the radiator that was out of my other truck, my 1985 F-250 with a 302, as I'm going to be using a very similar one in this truck. And this is just for mock-up. It will all be coming apart later.